Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do some scrapyard basing for my orks. Let's get started. So I like to base my orks on this kind of scrapyard basing. So when I saw the space under the Wasbomb and Decker jets, I knew I had to do something cool for them. The rough plan I had was to make a small hill with some fences and scrap parts next to a broken up road. If I had the space, I also wanted to magnetize some parts to hold some of the war gear. But first up was the hill. Using my crafting knife, I carefully pried this off of the base. I didn't use too much glue initially because I knew I wanted to do something along the lines of this. I then marked out the rough shape of the base and used my foam cutter to get it out. After cutting it to the rough shape of the base, I then had to start shaping it to look a bit more like a hill. At the same time as doing this, I was also trying to clean up the edges a little bit more. Now that's much better. Once I ended up getting it to the shape that I wanted, I had to then mark where I wanted the stand to go through. This was a little bit tedious, but using the crafting knife and the hand drill made it quite easy. And after getting all of that part done, it looks like this. Then it was time to give it a nice, healthy layer of glue to stop the primer from melting it. With all that ready, it's time to grab the basing bits. Hold on, what's that? Oh, it's just a shameless plug. Yep, that's right. All of the basing bits you see in this project were conjured up from the digital depths and are available on my profile over at Cults 3D. So if you want to up your basing game, links down below. Alright, enough of this. Let's get back into it. I was also lucky enough to find a spare bit of corkboard that I could use for the road. But before using any of the bits, I wanted to glue it down to the base and add a little texture. And of course, to add some of the texture, some more wall filler. To make sure the connection for the fences and the pole was strong enough, I decided to pin them down, along with a healthy amount of superglue. The barrel, road and concrete pieces didn't need pinning, so they were quite quick to put there. But I also glued down a magnet under the concrete pieces for a bit of the war gear to stick to the base so I don't lose them. And trimmed off the edge of the road so it sits a bit more flush on the base. And so far, it looks like this, which I think looks really cool. And then I just need to let it dry for a while, and I'll get back to it once it's dry. Once it had dried, I made sure the stand could still fit in there, and then I primed it black. And when that was done, it was time to get painting. I started it by giving it a healthy layer of Martian iron crust texture paint. I used this all over the ground, and I even added a tiny bit to the road to make it blend in a bit. And when it was all nice and dry, it was time to paint the concrete and then give it all a nice dry brush with some Zandri dust. To do the concrete, I used Mechanicus Standard Grit. And even after that, it's looking pretty good. But next up was to do the road. So I used some Corvus Black. I just quickly dry brushed it all over the road, and then I also filled up the tiny crack with some of the other texture paint. And with that part done, I wanted to move on to making some of the stripes on the road. This part was actually pretty fun. I used some masking tape to mark off the areas I didn't want to get any paint on, used some Ulthuan Grey as a base, and then I used some Bad Moon's Yellow to give it the nice yellow look. After letting it dry a little bit, I took off the tape and it looked like this. The next step was to do all the metal bits. I decided to base them all in lead belcher and give a few spots of Balthasar gold to make it look a bit rusty. And with all the metal basing done, it was time to move on to the barrel and the sign. I decided to use some Mephiston red here, and I only used a thin layer so it would still show through as metal. This part really didn't take that long, but I then decided to add a little bit more texture to the road and the concrete pieces. So I used a sponge to lightly stipple on some Mechanicus standard grey to the road. I also went over some of the yellow parts of the paint to make it look a bit more chipped too. I then did a light stippling of some Corax white over both the road and the concrete pieces to brighten them up a bit. With all the rest of these parts done, I moved on to some Agrax Earthshade on the concrete pieces, road and all the metal parts. And with all that part drying, I decided to check out my transfer sheet to see if I could find anything I liked. And I ended up finding a small white orc symbol that I wanted to use. So before sticking it on, I painted a small war on my sign, and then I put the transfer on. After letting everything dry completely, it was looking really good at this stage. But to make sure the metal pieces really looked a bit more metal, I decided to dry brush a lighter shade of some silver on there. So I used some Runefang steel all over the metal bits, even the painted red one, to give it a scratched look. And with all this looking done, it was time to do the final part, which is to use some Abaddon black all around the rim. And here we are. I'm thrilled with how this wasteland type basing has turned out, and there are so many ways you can customize it to suit your needs. I'd love to see other people's experiences with making these, so let me know down in the comments below. But for now, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more videos to come, and I'll see you in the next one.